we listening? Are we planting seeds and finding better ways to build a better world? Find a better way to build a better world. Oh, there's a brand new generation. There's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world. Yeah. All together now, we are reaching out and finding better ways to build a better world. And find a better way to build a better world. Oh, there's a brand new generation. There's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world. Oh, there's a brand new generation. There's a brand new generation. Oh, for a brand new healthy world. Yeah, yeah, for a healthy world.
Our planet and agri-food systems are currently facing several disruptions.
Driven by climate change, economic shocks, COVID-19, conflicts, to name only a few.
This has resulted in food supply and demand shocks, undermining global food security.
The participation and empowerment of all the actors is critical to building a resilient, sustainable, and inclusive agri-food systems.
Young scientists play an important role in identifying and scaling up innovative solutions to positively transform agri-food systems.
However, their research is often overlooked and underfunded, and they are often excluded from decision-making processes.
In early 2022, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Food Forum
launched the first ever cohort of the Young Scientists Group.
This offers young scientists a platform to share their ideas about agri-food systems and research while capitalising on their dynamic expertise.
We are thrilled to introduce ourselves as the first Young Scientists Group cohort.
20 young scientists, 10 men and 10 women, were brought together to work closely for a year.
We come from various regions and countries.
Ghana country, Australia.
Benin, Brazil,
中国
中国
Ghana,
Indonesia,
Italia,
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 Nepal,
Nepal,
Kenya,
Lebanon,
Nigeria,
The United Kingdom, the United States of America,
Zimbabwe,
Zimbabwe.
We come together as a multidisciplinary team which includes nutrition scientists, plant scientists, animal scientists, agricultural economists, soil scientists, and food scientists.
but more importantly, our passion and our values for nature, for our planet, for human rights, for a decent life for everyone.
Are what brings us together towards a common goal.
As youth, we want to create a sustainable future for the next generations.
As the Young Scientists Group cohort, our main objective is to provide scientific evidence and technical knowledge
to the various tracks and initiatives of the World Food Forum.
And early next year, we'll present the first World Food Forum Young Scientific Report.
Looking at science-based solutions to ensure a better food future and empower youth to be the actors of our agri-food systems.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. After this wonderful video, I have chills, honestly. Let me introduce you to the first ever, and the 2022, Young Scientists Group cohort. Please stand. Everybody give them a round of applause. Woo! You guys look fantastic. Welcome and congratulations. You can sit now if you want to. Now that you've met the group, let me officially welcome you all to this session with the WFF First Ever Young Scientists Group. They were all selected after a very thorough process amongst more than 110 applicants around the world. They are now reaching the halfway point of their mandate, almost halfway, and they have prepared a special session for us today. In the next hour, our beloved scientists will challenge everyone in this room and those with us virtually, hey guys on Zoom, to reflect on youth representation in science, accessibility of academia for young people and vulnerable groups, as well as the role of science to transform our agri-food sustainably and more. Let's make this a collective exercise. So those in the audience, those on Zoom, I'm going to be talking to you and I want you to talk back, challenge our own perspectives and ideas, and listen to what our speakers have in store. Whew, guys, you feeling good? You feeling all right? You ready? Great. The first speaker I'm inviting on stage this morning is Imad Antoine Ibrahim. Hey, Imad.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm great. So excited to hear from you. Imad is super accomplished, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. You guys ready? You ready? You ready? Okay, good. Imad is an assistant professor and research projects manager at the Center for Law and Development, CLD, in the College of Law, Qatar University, Doha, Qatar. He's also a senior research associate and projects manager at GLawCal, Global Law Initiative for Sustainable Development, Essex in the United Kingdom. He has been working on global scientific issues from a legal perspective and their interplay with other fields such as emerging technologies for the last decade. 10 years?
Yeah, pretty much all my 20s.
Ooh. He's currently involved in several projects in places such as South Africa, the MENA region, Central Asia, and China. Imad will kick us off today and tackle a topic I have many thoughts on myself. Young scientists belong at the table. Imad, go ahead.
Thank you, Rachel. Can we have the slideshow on, please? All right. That's not the... OK. I took some time to think about this if I want to discuss the topic of young scientists belong at the table. The first question I asked myself, who exactly am I addressing? Who is the audience? What do we mean by young scientist? Because there is young and there's scientist. If you combine these terms together, that's a little bit tricky. So let's start with the basics. What's a scientist? It's someone who finished her or his education at one point. They have relevant years of work experience, I would say 3 to 4, or doing a PhD. And after that, in their early, I would say 29 to 30. So I'm defining here the term scientist as someone anywhere between the age of 26 to 35 who might be young, according to the UN definition of a young person. So that's scientist. So if you add young to that, that puts us under this bracket. So if it's not the audience I need to discuss, because everybody here is accomplished in their own fields. So what's then the topic of the presentation? That was also a bit tricky. Well, I thought that to add value to the debate, the thing we discuss most is, what are the processes? What is the process for someone young, below 26, but even someone from the age of 26 to 35, struggling to find his or her place as a young scientist in the world? Because there's a difference between being a scientist and being a successful one. So this is a definition of a young scientist. Now, the table. You were asking about the table, Rachel. That's an interesting conversation. There is no such, I could not find a definition to the table. I would say the table is when a young person gets to become successful in his field and is known internationally and credible, having international credibility. That's to me, that's the table. Once, as a young person, went through the entire process of finishing education, accumulating experience, accumulating knowledge, then you get the international credibility, then you belong to the table. So now we define the terms. Let's discuss certain criteria as to what makes a young scientist today. Because today's definition of a young scientist is different than the one, I would say, 30 years ago. So what are the criteria today for anybody to become successful in science? That includes technology, that includes other fields. Let's start with the very basics. 30 years ago, our parents used to have one job. They used to go to a certain place to work, stay there for 30, 40 years, get retirement, and go home and live happily ever after. That's a great scenario. This does not exist anymore in our day, like right now. Anyone who wants to become a scientist or a technologist, whatever you want to call it, has to go through a gruesome process where he or she has to change 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever countries, as long as 5, 6, 7 jobs, position after position, deal with instability, deal with very competitive job market, potentially lack of opportunities, like coming from developing country, lack of visa or other issues as well, to get to a point after a decade or 10 years saying that, well, I made it. And that's not even guaranteed. Even after doing all these steps, there is no guarantee that I, as a scientist, a young one, will make it. So this is the basic, this is the background. Any young person has to keep this in mind. So the question is then, do I want to go through this process? Is it worth it? The response from my perspective is yes. Because you get huge satisfaction at the end of the road once you reach that stage. Once actually people who are famous in your field, who are authority, start actually contacting you, asking for your support, asking for your contribution. So I'm not trying to discourage anybody to go through this process. All I'm saying is you have to be ready for the next 10 years of your life to get there. If you're willing to put the work, you'll get the result. But young people these days, they are like one click beyond going away and not doing anything. We're living in a very modernized world where people want results fast. That cannot happen right now as a young scientist, because the challenges we face are much more than the challenges of previous scientists. So that's the first criteria. Which gets me to the second point, risk-taking. I remember when I was 23 years old, yes. I was working in a law firm. I'm a lawyer by training, by the way. I got to the bar. I had a great career as a lawyer, making tons of money. And then I had an opportunity going to China. Nothing was clear. I had no idea what would happen. I had no security in terms of projects. And I was confused. What should I do? The partner in the law firm told me, if you don't take this, you will always wonder, what if? What if could happen? What would happen if I did not take that opportunity? Right now, I would be working in the law firm back home in Lebanon. The alternative, which is currently being assistant professor and working on topics related to energy, water, and food, publishing books, and writing articles. To me, this is a better scenario. Obviously, the sacrifices I had to go, the amount of unpredictability I had to go through as well, was great. So, in a way, we have to take a leap of faith while putting the hard work within. How many people these days are willing to take a leap of faith and risk it all? So this is the second criteria. This is here, tech savvy. I guess this is one of the advantages we have. We are all born with technology. From our early ages, we understand how to use it better than the previous generations, better than our parents. So once you understand the background and the hard work you need to put in, once you take the risks, then you try to capitalize on the advantages you have. These include our ability to maneuver technology and use it to our own advantage. A couple of weeks ago, I was still at the university back in Qatar. I was giving a lecture to senior professors on how to use the different platforms to diffuse our work, dissemination of research articles, because visibility, for instance, is everything in academia. We don't have to do that ourselves. We don't have to do that ourselves. We can do it alone. Meanwhile, others, they are struggling to use that. And this is just one element of the entire debate, that we can use that to our advantage. The final point, which I did not include in the criteria here, but it's very important, that is of interdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinarity, yes. I'm a lawyer by training, but I work on law and tech, law and environment, law and geology. There is no such thing anymore as traditional fields. You are no longer only an engineer, you're also a policymaker. You have to study policies if you want to make sure that your work has an impact. You are no longer a scientist, you also have to do other stuff. This is the world we're living in right now, and this is the only way to ensure a holistic approach to this conversation. Otherwise, the work we do has no impact. So as a person, as a professional, you have to familiarize yourself with topics that are beyond your education. You have to constantly zoom in and zoom out to see the big picture, but at the same time, be expert in your field. So, are you seeing the amount of criteria we have all together if you combine them? So what happens next? You create a value. The accumulation of research experience, research expertise, risk-taking, publications, interdisciplinarity, and other issues gets you to a point where you can actually create a value to human society. Now the question is, are you willing to do all that to create a value? I know if I knew, probably, I'm asking myself the question, if I knew all the sacrifices I had to make to get to where I am, I would probably have not made it. Because the choice is much difficult in comparison to being in a law firm, working 9 to 5 and going home. But now that I am at that stage where people take my scholarship seriously, it's extreme satisfaction. And I'm going to give you an example of the idea of interdisciplinarity. In my job, we deal a lot with law and technology. The recent work we're doing is related to farm tech. You have big companies, big tech companies, agri-tech I would call them, they're coming to the farmer and tell them, listen, I will take your data, I will analyze them, I will use machine learning, and I will come back to you with results to improve the quality of your crop. Now, one would say, that's nice, that will help the farmers a lot, and they will all be happy. In practice, what happens? Agri-tech companies come, sign a legal contract with the farmer who does not understand any of the legal terms, putting the farmer in an asymmetrical relation with the agri-tech company, and basically at their mercy. It's only now, in the last 2-3 years, that we have European Code of Conduct, we have certain principles in the US, and FAO is working on that in the context of Digital Council for Agriculture, which was only established in 2020. So my job as a lawyer is to understand agriculture, farming, understand what the private market needs, and at the same time, try to put all that in a legal sense that makes sense to all the parties. I cannot do that if I have only a limited understanding of what's happening. So I have to familiarize myself with the topic, to try to take it back to the legal side and use a language that everybody can understand. So in my field, that's a delicate balance to make. How do you take into consideration other sectors, but at the same time, making sure that you are still in your same field? And each one of us, as a scientist, has to do that. And that challenge is actually bigger than making it at the big stage and becoming a successful scientist. Because once you are a successful scientist, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to make the right and wise choice. And that's actually more difficult than anything else. How do you balance different values? In this case, what's more important? The rights of the farmer, having better crops, or what else? How do you balance different values for society? And finally, I will leave you with this thought. All what I said before, so we go back from the beginning. Having the hard work, taking risks, being interdisciplinary, having an interdisciplinary perspective, and at the same time accumulating experience, gets you to a point. So why do you get an added value? It's because of your unique experience. It's not because of me as where I was born that got me to be able to be as one of the Young Scientists Group program. It's because of the 10 years in which I changed 8 countries between China, US, Italy, Poland, Qatar, UK, Belgium, all that accumulated experience that got me to a point where I have my own unique experience about the topics, based on which I can add a value. That's my message to young scientists who are starting with the field, and also to those who are struggling to get to a certain point where they can be considered successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Imad, thank you so much for sharing that, for giving us some guidance in terms of what we need to be successful. It's a lot of food for thought for our audience and for all decision makers around here these days, a lot of food for thought for youth aspiring scientists. I am now delighted, thanks Imad, to invite Andrea Rosso, Pasem Kochofa, and Craig Chibanda to the stage with me. You guys can go ahead and come on stage. You look great. You can come on up. Don't be shy. In the meantime, let me tell you a little about them. Andrea graduated from, see, look at them. They look beautiful. You guys look great. Give them a round of applause. Andrea graduated from Wageningen University and Research and holds an MSc degree in Environmental Sciences and an EIT Climate KIC Master Label. He specialized in environmental justice, especially in women's rights, love that, in agriculture, and his interests lie in connecting human rights and environmental discourse to local capacity building initiatives. Pasem works as an applied economist at the International Water Management Institute. She has an impressive curriculum, having been one of the awardees at the WFF Transformative Research Challenge last year. Congratulations. As well as the 2015 USAID Feed the Future FTF Legume Scholar Awardee. Pasem, you're a star. As a young African scientist, she is passionate about research that contributes significantly to attaining various sustainable development goals, the SDGs, especially those related to poverty and hunger reduction, gender equality, and shared prosperity. Her research agenda covered 3 interrelated streams of inquiries: food and nutrition security, animal health, and economics, and resilience measurements. Pasem, you're doing a lot. And last but not least, Craig over here is a research scientist at the Thunen Institute of Farm Economics in Germany. Additionally, he is pursuing a PhD in agriculture at Hohenheim University. What year are you in?
I'm left with 2 months.
Oh my God, you're almost there. Good job. As part of his work and research, he examines the effects of agricultural exports on farm economics and value chains in African countries. Previously, he worked for the FAO on family farming and responsible investment in agriculture. As a group, they will emphasize why marginalized groups are essential to achieving sustainable agri-food systems, and especially focus on the example of Women and Climate Change. Thank you guys for this important work. You can go ahead, blow us away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rachel. Today, we will gonna present our research titled Why Marginalized Groups Are Essential to Achieving Sustainable Agri-Food Systems. We will gonna focus on women and climate change. We are both men, women, people not binary should talk about that, not only women. We are the Better Life Group, and I'm Andrea, Pasem, and Craig. And during this year, as a Young Scientists Group, we will gonna focus on 4 groups: women, migrants, indigenous people, and smallholders. We will gonna do that for advocacy in research. We will gonna also write a report on women and the other marginalized groups, and we will also provide guidelines to the work of the World Food Forum. Well, let's focus on climate change, because from a general perspective, climate change is perceived as democratic, therefore affecting everyone equally on the globe. But several studies, as all you know, show that climate change is not gender or racial neutral, but affect mostly those marginalized groups that contribute least to the cause of climate change. During our research, we group different factors that influence inequality in climate change. First of all, there are geographical reasons. For example, being in the south of the world could affect women and other people in access to services. Then there are sociocultural reasons, and then biological, such as gender. But how and why women are affected by climate change, and specifically in agri-food system? Well, women constitute the 48% of agricultural labor force. In Africa, we are talking about over the 60%, and that's why researchers call feminization in agriculture. But they receive only the 5% of agricultural services. Besides, the 15% of agricultural landholders are women. This means that usually they have small plots that are mostly affected by climate change. Secondly, women work mostly for traditional, highly diverse crops and subsistence agriculture that is highly threatened by the effects of climate change. Besides, I will say that these crops are highly threatened by the causes of the effects of climate change. And their role, therefore, in natural management and biodiversity conservation is highly threatened, because women mostly focus on the selection and collection of plant varieties, but also on the collection of wild food. And lastly, but not least, women are 14 times more likely than men to die for natural disasters that, as we know, are increasing due to climate change. Now I will give the floor to my colleague and friend, Pasem.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, so let's talk about the questions, the location of women most affected by climate change. And let me tell you, answering these questions is not straightforward. And largely because climate change is universal, we are all affected by climate change, and there's no given location where most women are concentrated or where all of them are. So we have to strategize in order to answer this question. First, we went by the geographical locations or countries most affected by climate change itself. And as you can see from the pictures, I guess, on my left, if you consider the global South countries, I'm talking about East Asia, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, where I'm from, they concentrated the 90% of the global effect of climate change, even though they only contribute to the least. And above that, these countries are vulnerable to climate change essentially because how dependent their economies are to natural resources. I'm talking about agricultural productions. The GDPs are still ranging between 40% and beyond even 60%, making them very reliant into natural resources for their economies. And another aspect about agricultural production is it's usually take place in rural settings, which means those rural areas are even more vulnerable because they lack even more infrastructures, more technology to fight climate change disaster. I'm talking about drought or even flooding recently in the case of Pakistan. So, to quick recap, okay, the location of where most women are affected by climate change are probably going to be the global South countries operating in agricultural sector across the rural areas. But it does not end there. So if you consider, as I said at the beginning, this is not straightforward. If you consider now the intersectionality between climate change, agriculture, rural migrations, and rural transformations, you can see that there is more to the story. As you can see from the picture below, there is a direct link between climate change and agriculture. Let me explain. So when the most productive asset of a household is depleted due to climate change, they face the harder decisions, which is leave or stay and adapt to the new harsher environment. Usually when leaving, which is migration, is considered, most of the time only male member of the household is given priority to leave because migration is considered morally wrong and unsafe for women. So most of the time, they're going to be left behind, caring for households and families, and still operating on those low productive assets. This contributes largely to what my colleague described as feminization of agriculture. Men leaving women behind, and then continue the cycle of keep working on a low productive asset. But there are circumstances under which women can also experience positive migrations, meaning that they can either travel across the country, meaning internal migration, or beyond the border of their countries, either legally or illegally, exposing themselves even more to abuses and gender-based violences. So, to recap overall, so the locations of most women affected by climate change will gonna still probably be the global South countries across the rural areas. But because of this dynamic intersectionality that I described, you can literally find some of those women literally anywhere. Across Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, working as a house help, or across Europe, United States, and elsewhere, within the agricultural sectors or also outside of the sectors. So I hope I have provided a big picture of that questions. And now let me give the floor to my colleague, Craig, to continue on how we can still make these women part of the solutions. Thank you.
Okay, so we have looked at the challenges, but it's important to remind each other that women are not victims. Women are in the front line against climate change. They're playing each and every day, they're playing a key role in climate change adaptation and mitigation, right? So women do play a crucial role in the fight against climate change in different ways. But for this short presentation, I'm going to zoom in to just two issues. So the first issue is women play a key role in reducing hunger and food insecurity, which is often a result of the effects of climate change. For example, we know that when women are given equal access to productive resources, such as water and land, they are able to increase food production by 20 to 30%, which means with this increase, they are able to lift up about 150 million people out of hunger. You know, this is significant. So having equal access to these opportunities means we are at a better position to fight climate change. Then the second issue is women, especially in rural areas, as Fassam said, are not only victims, but they also possess unique knowledge and experience because they are working every day in agriculture with natural resources. I'll give an example. Evidence shows that indigenous women have unique knowledge on water management and also know specific crops that are more adapted to harsh conditions. But often this knowledge is either not documented or left out, but they are fighting against climate change on a day-to-day basis. Right, so we have seen the scenario, right, that women are affected by climate change, women are playing a key role, but what needs to be done to not leave women behind, right? So we have 3 points. Now, they are not an exhaustive list, but there are 3 points that we think are important. The first thing is we need to ensure that women participate in policy making, right? So because of their unique knowledge and unique experience, when climate change policies are drafted, they have to be part of the process, right? Right from the top to the woman who is in the village. Then the second thing is we have seen, as Andrea said, climate change affects people differently. Climate change affects men, women, and young people differently. That means our policies have to be age and gender responsive. We cannot have one policy and expect that the outcome will be the same for everyone. Then the second one, which is the last one, which is more relevant for research, is as researchers and the people that are funding research, there is a need to increase research, which really brings to the forefront this knowledge that women have, the experiences that women have, and also show the inequality. No? Because when we look at some research, it seems like climate change is democratic, as Andrea said, but we need to bring this evidence to show the effect on climate change on women, on youth, and then we can start having a better picture and challenge the status quo. Now, to finish up, as Andrea said, as the Better Life Group, we are going to be having more of such presentations to raise awareness, not only in academia, but in different sectors of the role that different marginalized groups play in the agri-food systems. Why? Because when agri-food systems work for women, they also work for men, and they work for children. So when it's inclusive, it works for everyone, and this message has to go around. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll see each other around.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome. I learned a lot. I really appreciate you. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution to the problems, and when it works for women, it works for all of us, which is great. What you said is very, very important, not just for research, but also for policy and implementation on the ground. Women and other marginalized groups must, I'm going to pause here and make sure everybody's with me. It's not should, it's must. I want you guys to say must. Say must. Good. Must be at the core of our considerations and actions. The next speaker that will be joining me on stage is Dinesh Pandey, and he will follow extremely well the group that just presented. Dinesh, welcome. Come on stage. Come join me, come join me, come join me.
Thank you so much.
And Dinesh is a researcher in soil biogeochemistry, including nitrogen management, carbon sequestration, nutrient cycling, and soil ecosystem services.
Yes, correct.
Impressive. He also serves as a communications officer at WIPARD Asia and Pacific region. He is from a farming background. Really, Dinesh?
Yes.
And representing Nepal. I'm convinced that youth and young researchers especially can bring a fresh eye and perspective to research and sustainable development. Dinesh will tell us more about that and give us a taste of the upcoming Young Scientific Report prepared by the Young Scientists Group. Over to you, Dinesh.
Thank you, Rachel, for giving this time. So, hello, everyone watching on-site and virtually. I'm Dinesh. I'm speaking on behalf of our group, Young Scientists Group. I'm a member of the Young Scientists Group, and then especially we are working at a team that I'm as a coordinator of Young Scientists Report Working Group. So today we are talking about how we can bring the new perspective to the research. And I will give you some of the updates that what we have been done so far. As Rachel mentioned that I'm a researcher, I will say that I just practicing into research through the training process. So I know I am maybe like I can call it a researcher, but like a learning researcher. So that's my field. And then I wonder when I visit any farm or when I talk to any farmers, and even I'm from the family backgrounds. My family, mother and father, they used to do the sustainable and then kind of competitive farming back home in Nepal. So that's how like I have very strong attachment to the farming. And then fortunately, I became a soil scientist, that I can say proudly. So when I see this picture, as a resemblance that it's not only about science, what you do in terms of research, but the communication is important. You have a number of publications, you have your impact, but how, if it is not your impact is going to the target people, target group, that is the farmer, you do something that to address the problem of the farmers, and through the research, and if you are not reaching to the farmers, that means like somewhere your communication is missing. Our world is with full of conflicting interests and then also disagreement. But I believe that scientists like us, young scientists, we agree on a point that we have a common interest, that how we can communicate our discovery and results to the farmers. I think that is a very important point, and then we definitely need a communication in the science. And here, what we can do, to address this concern, definitely is our perspective from the young scientists. And I see that how we can increase the interest and the passion of the young scientists on it. The process is that let them engage into the value of his skills. Those can be conference, research, and then also discussion forum, and then also about networking, from where they will learn about. Because we need to create the young scientists or young people such a kind of a society where we can be healthier and safer. That is how necessary, I believe. And then on this part, and I was also going through the back of the literature of what literature suggests that many publications, they have reported the value of the investment of youth. Because if we are thinking about the future interdisciplinary research, there we need to invest in invest in a youth research. Especially, I was also looking at the Sustainable Development Goal agenda, especially goal number 1, that is the ending poverty, and then also goal number 4, that is about talking about the inclusive and quality of education. I believe that, Rachel, without keeping young people as an investment, those goals cannot be achieved. And then I believe that those investment in the young scientists or investment in the youth is a long-term investment. So we should not worry about, because this is a sustainable long-term investment. And I was going through some of the platforms, what are there available. For example, as you mentioned, I also represent the WFF, which we can share, exchange idea, we can discuss about the issues, and then also it is like bringing or calling our agenda into the valuable platform. In the similar way, there are many other platforms as well. But I found something the Young Scientists Group is a little different. Different in a way that it discusses, especially it pick up the critical roles of the scientific evidence with the technical knowledge that are very close with the many initiatives of the World Food Forum. So as a member and then as our team, we are very proud to be a team of the Young Scientists Group. So in this point, I especially think, like my personal opinion about the Young Scientists Group is, this is one of the best platforms to think about interdisciplinary research capacity enhancement. Because we all are talking about the different issues related to the agri-food systems. And we are working in this group with 2 big modalities. That is one with the thematic working groups, and then another is the scientific working groups. And I represent Young Scientist Report Working Group, and I have many friends behind these slides because we used to meet often, and then we used to interact, and that's how we have been making progress. So this is the team, what we are thinking. And then I was reading the recently published FAO flagship report. It's called the State of Food and Agriculture, which was published last year in 2021. And I was going through some of the highlights, especially it mentioned about the definition of the agri-food system resilience. And then after, the framework, how we can work on it, so that how we can define the agri-food system resilience. And then there is also included the guiding principles, So any stakeholders who are interested to develop the agri-food system resilience, they can learn from this recent publication. So I especially want to focus all of you, those who are watching on-site and virtually, please go through this document, very important. If you are thinking as an activist or a researcher in the agri-food system, this is very important. And because look at around right now, we have a very or like a very negative impact on the agri-food system. Either we can say through the global climate change perspective or ecosystem degradation, or also from the many other pressing issue, for example, the societal or economic and public health related issue due to the COVID-19, right? So that has been interrupted too much in our agri-food systems. So what we need is, we need a kind of like a transformation. That transformation from addressing the stress and shocks. So again, transformation, but how we can make that transformation into opportunity, Because we need to create such an environment where we can be more resilient, where we can think about more inclusiveness, and where we can think about sustainable future. So on that perspective, our group, Young Scientists Report, we are working on a report with a working title of the Transforming Agri-Food System, Shock and Stress into Opportunities. And this is going to be happening through the empowering young people for a sustainable future. As I advocate for the young scientists, definitely, without a young scientist, I think it may not be complete. And we are trying to give a perspective from the young scientists how we can address these issues. And the topic we have been selecting here, especially for broad topic that includes the agri-food system, shock and stress. That's kind of like what is going on at the moment. And then about, we will include some of the real case studies. That what are the youth case studies that about the existing youth-based initiatives for improving agri-food systems. Are they going everything right? May not be. So we are also going to find out the challenge, what youth are facing on it, because we need to advance them in a sustainable agri-food system. So we are also going to talk about the challenges. And at the end, because we all are thinking and we all are talking about the World Food Forum, that how we can create a better environment, better scenario, and then also better society, definitely we need some kind of motivation or enabling practices that can empower young people in sustainable agri-food system. And I was advocating kind of like we need a communication in science, that the science has to be reached to the public. In that way, we are going to make this report very simple, so that the issue we have brought here, many people can understand it. And then those solutions, I would say potential solution, they can also be practical in a way. We hope to bring this report by early next year. So that's all for today. Thank you, everyone. And I would like to floor. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Dinesh. That was awesome, right? You're supposed to say yes. That was awesome, right? Okay, good. Thank you, Dinesh.
Thanks, you too.
Can have a seat. That was super exciting for me. I learned a lot. I can't believe Dinesh is from a farming background. I had no idea. But I love that because it's a lot more personal. I can't wait to see what the report will bring forward. I'm going to be reading it for sure. Let's all mark our calendars for the report release in early 2023. It's almost 2023, I can't believe it. Right on topic in terms of inclusivity of people from all spaces. Abdul Karim Rahim and Ram Neopani are coming up next and looking specifically at science for the ordinary citizen. I don't know about all of you, but sometimes when I hear scientists speak, I'm like, but they're going to tell us about how we can communicate science to everyone and how we can get out of our own silo of scientists only. So come on stage, guys. You look fantastic. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Abdul Karim has a PhD in crop cultivation and farming system from the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, CAAS, in 2020. You finished your PhD, congratulations. In 2021, he worked with the International Rice Research Institute, the IRRI, Hanoi, as an intern under the Climate, Food and Farming Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases Development Scholarships Program, the Cliff Grads. His research interest in agri-ecosystem, carbon and nitrogen cycling is tailored towards mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, promoting compassionate, I love that word, and sustainable farming systems, and ensuring food security. He was also born on a small farm, so this is Ram now. Hi, Ram. I know it's you, Ram. Born on a small family farm in Gorkha, Nepal. Ram, you saw firsthand economic and psychological implications of devastating plant diseases. This shaped your path into studying agriculture. He wants to pursue a career in academia. I think you'd be great. And design research projects around plant epidemiology, extension, international agriculture, and agriculture policy. Thank you for that. You guys, go ahead, blow us away.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So today, I'll be talking about science for ordinary citizens. As a person, I grew up with a middle-income family and in the city of Lagos in Nigeria. And I can tell you for sure that many ordinary people do not understand science. They feel science is for some set of geniuses or something, and yet I feel they have a role to play in today's world of science. First, we all know that the world is facing a lot of challenges, from climate disruption to pollution and waste problems, nature and biodiversity loss, and all these are tied to our agri-food systems. So we as scientists, we understand quite a whole lot about these problems, but the question is, the problem seems not to be the problem anymore. Rather, it's not taking action that seems to be the problem. So at this moment, it is more important to take actions rather than dwelling on the problems that we face as a people. According to the World Economic Forum Global Risk Perception Survey, it was found that climate action failure is the most severe risk we face, in the next decade. And by climate action failure, we mean not taking enough action to mitigate climate change. So, like I was saying, it seems more like the problems are no longer the problems, but not taking actions or sufficient actions seem to be the new problem. So, usually in the academia, we have scientific publications, scholarly articles, and all that, and we are not doing enough to get this message, our key findings, to the broader society. And then we have maybe deficit of science journalists to get this information to the people who need them, the everyday people. So we need to change this narrative. So climate actions should not be exclusive to maybe the government, scientific communities, developed nations, or the educated. To solve the problems that we face, we need concerted effort. We need everybody, everyone has a role to play, including the everyday people. So the question is, why do we need to make science relatable to everyday people? Of course, we know that when people are informed, they can make better decisions. For example, you have farmers, and they use a lot of plastics for their production, and if they probably dispose of this plastic poorly or leave them abandoned on the farmlands. But if we make them understand that, okay, if you don't dispose plastic properly, in the long term, they could affect the soil health and even your productivity. So when we get people to understand science, they can make better decisions. Again, a lot of people have this wrong perception about science. Climate change is not real. It's just a consensus by the science community to make sure they get more money for funds and stuff like this. It still boils down to the fact that people do not understand what we mean by climate change and some of these things. So it's important that we get the message of science across to them, the key findings, the important things they also need to take part in. And lastly, here, For example, when I was in Beijing, I did some research about cropping systems in the south of China, and we had some great findings about some traditional cropping systems that are very good for the environment. Yeah, we published some really nice articles, and I left. But the question that still bothers me is, the farmers there, have they been told about these systems that is very good for their production, their yield, and also the environment? So if we do not communicate science to the ordinary people, our scientific discoveries may just be right there on the publications, and maybe it just goes unapplied. So the first thing I'll be talking about how we can make science relatable is that first we need to break the language barrier. Of course, the UN works with a number of languages, 6 of them, and I can tell you that this covers only about 49% of the world population speak this 6th language or understand this 6th language. That's according to the Central Intelligence Agency. Of course, we cannot expect the UN to work on 1,000 languages. No, that would be too much of a burden. So, but still, it's important that we are able to get important climate change documents, World Bank reports, things like this, into languages that a lot of people can understand. For example, back at home, I went buying vegetables, and I complained about the price. And the woman clearly told me that the rain has been falling backwards. Like, she said it in my native language. And I understood that. She just means that the rainfall pattern is irregular. I was supposed to tell her about climate change, that's the real problem, what she can do, and the organization she needs to join, the farmers organization that may have some information. But even the word climate change itself, I could not translate into the local language. And this kept on bothering me. When I got back home and used Google Translation, it was terrible. Of course, a lot of people across the world are beginning to do something about this, to get some of these terms in other local languages. And my language, Yoruba, is spoken by 45 million people. So imagine how much we are missing out if we don't get, and a lot of them probably don't speak any of the 6 UN languages. So imagine what we're missing out if we don't begin to think about getting information into other languages. So it's important that we translate and interpret, science ideas, so that we can bridge this gap between the ordinary people and then the scientific community. So I'll stop right here, and my colleague Ram will take the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. Well, let's start from these kids. So we can do more by incorporating science education to the early childhood education. We can make games, that is science games, or engage kids in arts, paintings. This is all about augmenting curiosity among the kids, and it's all about letting them know that science is not scary as ordinary people think. Well, I'm not sure if I, a first-generation PhD student, is still struggling to navigate the graduate education, is the right person to say this or not. But believe me, guys, there is a huge disconnect between scientists working in the lab or academia and farmers working in the field. Yeah, believe me, guys, this is the reality right now. So, in July this year, I and my advisor, Dr. Beth Gugino, were scouting a vegetable farm in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we have lots of Amish people. These people are isolated. They don't use modern technologies, mobiles, internet. They try to isolate from this chaos world, and they are just living in their happy world of farming. Yeah, and we were scouting the field to see if there is any disease in the onion field of the Amish grower. And I noticed that the Amish was very curious what we found in the field. And when we find anything like bacterial disease, we'll let him know that this is a bacteria and you can manage this way. And I realized, well, it's not that ordinary citizens are not interested in science, but we have to go to them and just let them know in their own field that science is there. And, well, when I was in undergrad, I was very much intimidated by these scientific journals, research articles. But when I went to grad school, because I had to do this, I figured out how to read the papers. But still, sometimes I get frustrated that why these articles should be so complex, why there should be one format for reference, methodologies, results, why can't it be simple synopsis? Because all about science research is serving the target audience, right? So here I want to share one story. Last week when I was going back to my home from college, I met a friend, I would say, in a bus, and we just talked about our research. And at one point, he was just boasting about how many citations he got, what's his H index. Well, that's great, but does your citation translate into how many farmers do you serve? I don't think so. Then it's useless. It's useless. So at last, I want to call to all the audience, to all the scientific background or scientific community that let's not run behind these citations, H index. Let's run behind a greater cause that is making science more accessible to the greater audience and serving the humanity. And for us agricultural scientists, it is serving the farmers. Thank you.
That was awesome. We need to make science, agriculture, all of those things more inclusive because we all have something to offer. We all have something to bring to the table. Thank you both for that, Abdul Karim and Ram. Those are some really interesting perspectives about language, localizing examples and experiences, and making sure science is relatable to citizens, global citizens. These are very powerful and important messages from, but also for, our group as young scientists, so please help me help myself when I'm reading. I am looking forward to it. We need science that is accessible, that is shared outside of the scientific community, and we need to think outside the box. That's crucial. Let me now call our last speakers to the stage. Shangjuan Zhang, Peter Sarinwama, and Alice Karanja. Come on up. Hi, Peter. Hi, Shangjuan. Hi, Alice. Hey. You guys look fantastic as well. Let me tell you about Shangjuan first. It's her. She has a comprehensive research and work experience in the fields of plant sciences, agriculture, and mechanization. Shangjuan works at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. She's worked there since 2019 as an associate professional officer in plant production and protection division at the FAO headquarters in Rome. It's your home. Here, right here. Yeah. That's cool. She contributes to the multidisciplinary innovation and sustainable mechanization, conservation, agriculture, precision agriculture, and the list goes on. You're doing a lot, Shangjuan. Before joining the FAO, her research focused on plant microbe interactions, plant hormone signaling, and molecular mechanisms of plant resistance to biotic and abiotic stresses. Gonna move on to Peter. That was a lot of science in there. I was like, ooh. Peter is a lecturer at the University of Environment and Sustainable Development in Ghana. And he holds a PhD in governance and regional integration from Pan-African University in Cameroon. He employs in-depth quantitative and qualitative research skills and experience to offer solution-oriented contributions to issues of climate change, food security, adaptation, and environmental management, particularly in smallholder agriculture systems in developing economies. You're doing a lot, Peter, as well. As a practitioner, Peter has extensive experience in project development and execution through his engagement with the MacDan Group of Companies, Ghana, the Pan-African Farmers Organization, PAFO, and Rwanda and Kalube Consults Limited in Uganda. Peter, you're doing the most. The most.
Thank you.
Alice is a postdoctoral research fellow at the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF, in Nairobi, Kenya. Alice's research focuses on restoration of agricultural landscapes based on regenerative agriculture for biodiverse, inclusive, safe, and resilient, I love that word, food systems. Working with colleagues in Nutriscape's transformative partnership platform at ICRAF, Alice plans to pilot food tree portfolios under the different socio-ecological contexts in Zambia. This will help smallholder families obtain year-round access to nutritious foods, diversify their incomes, and boost their resilience to increased food prices and climate change. That's super important work. With support from One Earth's Daughters for Earth campaign, Alice also seeks to understand how local food across rural-urban landscapes influence food choices, including neglected, underutilized, and wild food species. The question they will try to answer, and the question I will ask them right now is, you guys ready for the question? You ready?
Yeah.
Can we create a Young Scientists Group legacy? Yes or no? Let us know.
Russell, yes, we can create a Young Scientists Group legacy.
And you might be wondering, what is a science legacy and why is it important? Is it about the number and quality of publications that you can make? Is it, as our colleagues illustrated, is it about winning prizes, grants, or scholarship? There are many ways to create a science legacy, which can include multiple pathways, for example, technical innovation, product transformation, and transforming the scientific culture and policy.
Science legacy is the circumstances when a scientist's work and name remain recognized beyond the lifetime. It's important because it also has a long-term impact and benefit to the world.
It is also about what you can do for the broader scientific community and ordinary citizen.
Irrespective of your level of seniority. But to create a Young Scientists Group legacy, certain key themes are very relevant. Collaboration,
connection,
communication,
and
exchange.
We have multiple ways in which we can create a Young Scientists Group legacy. For instance, as our colleague Dinesh has explained, the key objective for the Young Scientists Group is to create or provide scientific evidence and technical knowledge to the various initiatives of the World Food Forum. We are also producing a Young Scientist report on specific policy issues of particular concern to the youth related to agri-food system transformation.
So we are also establishing an organized and coordinated mechanism for the Young Scientists Group. Currently, we have the thematic working group and the scientific working groups, and those ones are based on strictly the 4 betters of better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life.
Moreover, we believe the important experience of our Young Scientists Group will encourage more young people, especially the young scientists, to see the world beyond the bench, to bridge the gap between the lab and the field, to be prepared to collaborate and communicate with the colleagues from different culture and professional background.
But to create a Young Scientists Group, we make the following recommendations. It is very essential for us to create and enhance collaboration, communication, and exchange among young scientists.
It's also essential to create the connection between the young scientists to the international organizations at all levels, from global, regional, to the country level.
As our first speaker indicated, it is very essential for us to create enabling environments that will enhance funding and investment opportunities for young scientists. And that explains why yesterday, our side event on how to fund your research is very key to our legacy.
The mentorship and career development is also of great importance to the young people, especially for the young scientists. As a young scientist, we inherit the past and link the future. We learn from the senior scientists and will continue to make more contributions to the world in face of the global challenges. It's also the great honor for us to meet all the senior scientists at the World Food Forum.
We hope that the mentorship initiative by FAO and other international organizations will support us to set up our career goals, diversify our opportunities, link us better with the demand system, be able to communicate better with multiple stakeholders, and maximize our potential.
It's also important to identify the potential collaboration with the young scientists through the FAO and UN global programs and initiatives, such as the Hand-in-Hand Initiative, South-South and Triangular Cooperation, GAIAS, 1,000 Digital Village, Green City Initiative, Global Action on One Country, One Priority Product, and many others.
We are also looking forward and working to establish a networking platform for the young scientists. This will involve an interactive platform that will connect young scientists and be able to exchange information and knowledge at global and regional levels. And for sustainability of the Young Scientists Group, we are looking forward to formulate an alumni network that will provide mentorship role to young scientists all over the globe and also support the future Young Scientists Group cohorts.
We also call for the need to strengthen the policy dialogue. Most importantly, there is the need for us to have a permanent seat for all young scientists across the globe on all policy tables so that we can contribute effectively. Yes, we believe that from our presentation and all that we've said and what other speakers have said, we can create a Young Scientists Group legacy through
collaboration, connection, communication, and exchange.
And every small step we take can eventually make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. How do I follow that? I can't. You said collaboration,
connection,
communication, and exchange. So I'm going to challenge you guys I hope you were paying attention.
We call it the triple CE.
Triple CE. You guys ready? We're going to say it together. After 3. 1, 2, 3. Collaboration, connection, communication, and exchange. Love that. You guys are great. You can have a seat when you're ready.
Okay.
So it's very clear to me why all of these young people have been selected, and I feel like we are in excellent hands in terms of the future of science. A few things that I've gotten from this is we really need to be inclusive in our spaces because people are affected regardless of their backgrounds, gender, your race, your immigration status, all of that. We also need to ensure that we have a lot more incorporation of the people who are actually on the ground and make sure that the science is relatable to them. And then, as I said, collaboration, connection, communication, and exchange. The road ahead, so it may be long and full of obstacles, but there are many opportunities and things that we can do to transform our agri-food systems. I hope you all know that, and I hope that's why you're here. There's so much potential for researchers, and especially young researchers, out in the field. It was lovely. It was my pleasure. You guys are awesome. We've been hanging out for the last few days to introduce you. Congratulations again on being selected. This is the 2022 Young Scientists Group cohort. I hope you all enjoyed their presentations. Those of you online, I hope you're inspired. I hope you're ready to start the work that is necessary. And I hope that all your dreams are seeming a lot more possible. A better and sustainable agri-food future for all of us. Hope this ignited ideas amongst our audience members. Those of you who are in this space, I hope you're buzzing and ready to go. And honestly, in general, thank you guys for your hard work. I want to wish you all a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of the time. Connect, network, meet people, do work together, collaboration, connection, communication, and exchange. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.